Hey everyone, welcome back to Rethink Reviews on the TYT Network, where we're talking about The Iron Giant, what a special movie it is, and also the kind of amazing and unique messages that it has for kids that you wouldn't imagine that you would find in a kid's movie. We have a great guest right now. Her name is Sascha Robinett. She is the founding principal of the Milagro Charter School, which provides students with both a bilingual and arts-integrated education, and she's been an educator for 18 years. Sascha, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. You've seen The Iron Giant, and you told me that you liked it. I'm curious about what your thoughts are as an educator about this movie and the themes that it addresses.
It's a really complex movie in that at different ages and different stages, it could definitely mean different things. I think it's an interesting movie in that it deals with the Cold War, yet it's so applicable to today because especially this generation of elementary kids has lived with the war in Afghanistan and that whole notion, but they're also the video game generation, so Call of Duty. There's no such thing as really thinking there's a consequence to death or war or fighting. And with this movie, it takes the idea of such a violent time and puts it into words that children can understand, meaning that Hogarth, that main character, has to explain to the robot what death is. And I think as adults, there's so much information we have that clouds what we think about death, what we think about war. And for kids, they don't have that background knowledge. And so they come at it at a much different viewpoint. And I think that's what I love about this movie is that right there is so many viewpoints. It's the idea of the living gun, the robot, the idea of Hogarth and his role in trying to make sense of his world and yet also explain it to the robot. The other main characters' perspectives, you're just constantly getting these complex subjects from a lot of different viewpoints. And I think that's really key with kids is them understanding things from multiple viewpoints because the ultimate goal for me as an educator is really to develop their sense of empathy.
In terms of kids and subjects like death and mortality and things like that, is there, I mean, I know it's kind of a broad question, but like, is there an age when kids can start to grasp that, or it doesn't make sense before then? I
think for every kid it's a little different, and I know that sounds weird, but it depends on their sensitivity. What is their background? What's their experience with death? Ironically, in every Disney cartoon almost, there's either someone dies in it or there's a family member that's dead. And these are really complex issues that are kind of brushed over. But what I've noticed with kids at different developmental levels is younger, they'll go, oh, somebody died. What they'll react to is not so much the death, but the emotional response of others. As they get older, they're able to talk about it more, or actually sometimes what will also happen is they'll want to deflect and make it not real. And I think it's through conversations and really listening to kids at any age that you really understand how they're dealing with it. I think often what we do as adults is we make these issues bigger because we put, again, our background knowledge and instead of literally listening to what the kids have to say about it. And I think they take such a unique perspective. We feel like it's our role to tell them how it should be, to interpret it for them, instead of really asking them questions and allowing them to ask us questions about their curiosity, because it's kind of by their questioning, by their responses, they'll tell us where they're able to handle information, where we can push, and what they're really taking in or not taking in.
I mean, one thing what you're saying about the Disney movies, I mean, basically every Disney cartoon is parental death is a major, I mean, it's major in the beginning, but it's usually just kind of used as sort of a springboard into the coming of age, you know, because it's a good way to get the little kid, animal or person, whatever. It's a good way to get them out on their own and making their own decisions. But like, I remember watching The Lion King with a friend of mine and his little brother, and I was in shock. I mean, the death of Mufasa, of the father, is so grisly, betrayed by his brothers, trampled to death by wildebeests, and then his son crawls under his dead paw. And I was like, and I heard kids in the theater crying.
That's part of the problem. It's always so over the top that it numbs the kids. They don't know how to react, because how do you deal? I think my daughter was 2 when she saw that movie. And when she thinks about The Lion King, she actually doesn't think about that scene. And I think it's because she can't even process it. Like, it's so over the top. It's something that happened, and it's scary, but it's hard to figure out what should I feel about this, because they really don't even take time with, let's say, Simba's feelings, emotions, or everyone's perspective on what just happened. Is they kind of brush over these things. So they put these really gruesome deaths or ideas of deaths or things that have happened to people, but they always just kind of brush over it as though you're not supposed to have feelings or reactions or independent thoughts about this. And it's just an odd thing. Versus in this movie, in Iron Giant, they really stop and they take the time to say, well, how do you feel about it? What do you think? And I think that's really, really key, and that's what kind of sets this movie apart from, say, The Lion King.
One of the very interesting themes in the movie is identity. And I mean, is there any sort of concept about when kids start to consciously kind of think about identity?
I don't think such identity. I think one of the beauties of, let's say, kindergarten, is their identity is so strong. They're all about me. and so being all about me doesn't really let in, which is a great thing, being judged by others, and therefore kind of watching what we do, what we say, all those things that limit ourselves later in life. The younger they are, they have this great freedom. They are most in touch with their identity and being who they are and not making any apologies or excuses, because they just expect to have identity, expect to be, this is who I am and you should accept me. And that's what makes them so great, and an opportunity we don't want to miss, because if we can really give them a strong sense of identity at that age and really plant those seeds, later when peers or just media messages start to impact them a lot more, they'll fight back and they'll stay true to more who they need to be, and not make excuses for that. And we see that start to change about when they hit 10. And that's when they start to notice a lot more about what others think, and they become very subconscious about how they're acting or how they're not acting. And so it makes them react very differently to the world.
There was a recent report by UCLA psychologists about sort of the rise of narcissism in kids. In this report, they're saying that in 2007, the top 5 values for kids, I can't remember what ages they were, but in 2007, the top 5 values were in this order: fame, achievement, popularity, image, and financial success. And then in 1997, the top 5 values were community feeling, benevolence, image, tradition, and self-acceptance. How do kids learn morals? I don't know if you would consider fame and achievement and popularity, those aren't really moral values, but it does affect the moral universe that you live in if you think that those are the most important thing.
I think that starts at a very young age. That's not something that comes later. Again, it's that word empathy, and I think that word empathy really means a lot to me in terms of a tool as an educator. And if you can always think about not just what does it mean for me, but what does it mean for others, that I think you start to tear down that narcissism.